Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beadon, joined by the Fantasy Master Lothario, the mustachioed man of mystery, the spectacled savant of fantasy sports, Gray Albright. How you doing, Gray?
Good, man. I'm good. I was just getting aggravated on online about people trying to still debate Mookie Betts or Ronald Acuna Jr. for NL MVP. That gets me so mad. I don't even know why. I'm not even honestly. Why? Why? I mean, I don't know, man. Why is this even like a debate? Is it to generate clicks? Is that all we're doing? Are we just trying to get people to like it's late in the year and like ESPN and others are like saying like, "Hey man, like come visit our site still." Like is that all that's going on here? Because I mean, Acuna has lapped bets in numerous categories. I mean, it's not even close in some categories, like steals, for instance. Um, it's just like today, it's Monday when we're recording this. So I don't know if you were aware of it, but Jeff Passan on of ESPN, he wrote something like, as people talk about how Acuna is going 40-70. No one is, less people are talking about how Betts is beating him in war. It's like, oh man, come on, man, come on. I mean, it's like you're basically throwing out like, war. What is it good for now? War is fine. Like it's like you don't have to throw out dozens of years of progress in baseball stats, but also like you also don't have to throw out the fact that Acuna has like way more runs, 50 plus more steals, a way better average, a better on base percentage, more homers as of the recording of this, at least. Like it's just the same amount of RBIs. Like it's just like I get it. You're trying to make this into a horse race, but there's no race, man. Acuna won this going away like weeks ago, if not months ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, we called it like at least like 2 months ago. Yeah, I think we called both races like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, something like that. I mean, I don't really understand the logic for it other than the position. Like he plays two positions, or Mookie Betts played two positions this year. Like if that is your one thing that you want to hang on to, then okay, so be it. But you're right. There's not like a single number that you can point to and be like, oh yeah, Mookie killed him here, or even
Actually,
beat him. Like
honestly, if I had a vote, I would vote for John Birdie because he has four position eligibility. No one wants to talk about John Birdie. Why isn't there a Birdie narrative going on? A Birdieative. Huh? Where's the John Birdie talk? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt my nonsense, but go ahead. You were saying.
no, I was done. It's fine. That's pretty much
And it's
it.
just
I mean,
yeah. I mean, there's really nothing to say because it's Acuna, man. And like he's lapping him, bro. I mean, I get it. Like people, if people have like a allegiance, and by the way, I like Mookie Betts. I mean, he had a great season. Don't get me wrong. It's not like this is not putting down Mookie Betts to elevate Ronald Acuna Jr. But I mean, let's be real here. I mean, the 50 in any other world of baseball, the 50 steals alone would have been like, that's it. Like, that's it. Like, that's it. I'm sorry. Like, he has 40 homers and 70 steals. Not quite 70 yet, but he'll get to 70 this week. I mean, that alone right there, people would have been like, any other, like, a decade ago, people would have been like, yeah, okay. I mean, that's the end of the story, isn't it? That's it. I mean, that's it. And then you throw in a 340 average. It's like, okay. I mean, Betts is hitting well this year. I think he's hitting like 310. Again, I mean, he's like 30 points off an average. I get it. Average isn't everything anymore. People found WAR and they're suddenly like, let's forget everything else we know. Like I understand that WAR takes into consideration other facets of their games, but just to take that into consideration, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You don't say like, okay, the fact that Betts is up by by the way, he's only up by like he's like half of a point in WAR. Like it's not even like he's blowing Acuna out of the water in WAR. But I mean, even if you were to like take WAR, like if you take WAR as one category, fine. Give Betts that category. But you can't take away every other category. I mean, literally every other category, Acuna's winning. But it's just because of, Betts happens to be just a fraction of a little slightly better in WAR. Then it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty close race. No, it's not. It's not a race. There's literally no race. Anyway.
It should be like 95% Acuna, and the 5% are LA-based writers who make the biased call, and they're okay with it. Like,
sure,
that's fine. If you want to say you're biased and vote, like, okay, I don't think that really belongs in the voting. I think you should try and remove your biases, but I get it. Like, you're an LA writer. If you don't vote for your guys, then all your fans and everybody who reads you is going to ask why the hell you didn't vote for your guy. I get it. But, like, come on. It should be a running away. Same thing on the AL side. Like, that's just, like I said, we called it 2 months ago. Let's stop it. And we think like, what, you think like Acuna went from being like an elite defender to being terrible, like in a season? Like, you think that, go look at the numbers, Gray. Like, it's quite literally that he doesn't have like runs saved, which is literally throwing people out from right field. You know how many times right fielders get a chance to throw anybody out? It's basically home plate, because you're not really throwing people out at third base. It's probably getting cut off most of the time. Like, it's kind of ridiculous that it's weighted in that way. Like, it's Ronald Acuna.
Oh no,
he's
completely.
Not fumbling out there in the outfield. We're not talking about Adam Dunn in right field. We're like, he's playing a very good right field. I promise.
Right. Oh, totally. And then they're like, oh well, Betts plays second base for
the
like
easiest position in all of baseball.
Right. That's what I was saying. It's like, yeah, okay. He played second, but maybe it's because it's such an easy position they could move him to second. When he went to play short, he played short for like 15 games, and he had like 5 errors. And like it was like every other game he was making an error at shortstop, and then they were like, you know what? He can't play shortstop. Let's move him to second because our team needs a second baseman. If Albies wasn't there, maybe the Braves might move Acuna to second. I mean, it's second base. I used to play second base. I mean, like, stop. It's just like, it's just so stupid. I mean, it really is. It's just so, and there we are talking about it. They did it. They won. They won.
They know what they're doing, Gray.
We talked about it. They won that. Yeah, damn it.
That's all right. We talked about like that award last week. Well, let's just leave that alone. Let's move on to the fantasy awards. We already talked about MVP. Let's just stay there and let's go to MVP. But let's add that ADP aspect in here because it matters. Like where they went in drafts certainly matters to some extent in regards to the value of a player, because Ronald Acuna would just be the guy like it would be in real baseball, but he went easily in the first round of every draft, if not one of the first three picks or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna rank Acuna in the 8th round next year because this way ADP wise, it'll be like, wow. I mean, he's really valuable for his ADP.
I don't think your rankings count as ADP, Greg, but I like the thought.
This year by ranking him like 10th. I think I ranked him the lowest out of everyone in the entire world. Just an absolute galaxy braining on my part. Okay, anyway, sorry, go ahead. ADP.
So yeah, we're gonna compare it to ADP. I will say in my RCL that I run, that's like my RCL, I guess, because all the writers kind of grab an RCL. I grab one of the paid ones because I don't want to put in all the time for no money. But like, I think I got Acuna at like 7. Clearly, they were listening to you, not me. So that's like the latest I saw him go was, I think, in that league at 7. But yes, to my point, we're going to talk about most valuable based on ADP. And, we're also going to talk about kind of the most improved and breakout. But I think we can kind of fold that in as we're talking about these guys, because we could basically hand all of the awards except for, breakout. We can't really give them. But Cody Bellinger is probably MVP at ADP. He's probably the most improved based on last season, or he's the comeback player, however you want to label him. Like Bellinger came back and was a fantasy asset again.
Yeah, no, completely. It was it was good to see, even though I didn't have him in any leagues. Unfortunately, I missed on that one. I think with Cody Bellinger, it was just a matter of getting healthy, and it was like that freak injury in the playoffs in what was it, 2020. He had the freak injury with the shoulder when he was, leave it to Cody Bellinger. He was like forearm bashing a player after a home run, and he hurt his shoulder. He dislocated it, I believe, separated. I don't know. Not a doctor. Anyway, I think, I truly believe in like the skills that, even though he wasn't quite at the power we saw like his MVP year, 2019, when he hit 47 homers. The fact that he hit 26 homers, and he has this like surprising speed where, if you look at him, you don't really think of him. It's kind of like Freddie Freeman in that, like, you don't really see a guy who's probably going to be, a 15 to 25 steal guy, even though that's what they are. It's kind of shocking, but they do it year after year, meaning Bellinger and Freeman, other guys too, of course. Like
Freeman, hold on. Freeman has done it 1 year.
Yeah, okay.
Like 1.5 years.
I forgot.
I
forgot I was bringing up Freddie Freeman in front of Beat
like little wound.
No, okay, so Kyle Tucker, we'll put him in that list. It's just like Cody Bellinger has, this like surprising speed. He's got good power. It was just a matter of getting healthy, I think, because his like, and also now, because we see how like the health of his, because I think he might have been pressing the last couple years, because he was also striking out a ton more. Like his strikeouts went back to pre-shoulder injury levels of like, in 2019, he struck out 16% of the time. And this year he struck out just under 16%. So it's like everything looks back in line with how he was pre-injury. Like the 2018 year of 25 homers, 14 steals, 260 from him. That is, that has a little bit higher strikeout rate, but that looks like him just with the limited pickoffs and the pitch clock now. So you bump up the steals a little bit, and I think that's what we're seeing. I think we're seeing like, because 2019 was a year where there was the bouncy ball for everyone like all year.
Yeah.
So we're not going to, I don't think we're going to see 45 plus homers again from Cody Bellinger, but he is a 25, 15 to 22 steal guy with like 275 plus average. So, I mean, really good. I mean, that's solid across the board. Middle of the lineup guy. I was thinking for next year, where would I be comfortable taking Cody Bellinger? Because right now on the player rater, he's sitting at 14th overall. I don't think I'm going to go that. I don't think he's going to be that high, but I think 25, maybe top 25 in that range, 20 to 25, maybe. I mean, I'm a fan. I think I think he's solid 5 category guy. Like maybe, to give you an idea, I just mentioned Kyle Tucker. His numbers probably are going to look pretty close to Kyle Tucker, maybe a few less homers and a few less steals, but not that far off, and potentially a better average. So yeah, I think Cody Bellinger is like a poor man's Kyle Tucker, but not really even that poor, just like a little bit off from Kyle Tucker.
Yeah, the speed, I certainly think like Tucker's got the edge there. Power, I mean, I'd still give the edge there, and even on even on average, I know you said you think maybe Bellinger gets a little bit of a side there, and he certainly did this year within in regards to his average. I'm just looking at like the underlying numbers of Bellinger, and other than the K rate, which is a clear change in what he was doing this year. Not a lot of like positive things that I can say. Like his barrel rate was the worst of his career. His hard hit rate was the worst of his career. Um, Again, the whiff rate, it goes along with the strikeouts. Like that was great, but like him swinging in and out of the zone really wasn't outside of his career norms. Like everything kind of looks either worse or career norms for him, other than the K rate. So I'm not sure that I believe that Cody Bellinger is back. He played 125 games to this point. We're talking on Monday. So like he would have been if he had played, all games, 100 and say 55 games, maybe on track for like 31 home runs. I don't think I see him doing that. I don't think I would project him to do that next year. The speed maybe just because he's kind of again taking advantage of the rules. He seems like just a guy who wants to run to some extent, which helps, in the running game itself, just a guy that has the willingness to do it. And then the other part is where's he signing? Because I don't think he's back with the Cubs, which means all the numbers that he has this year could change a little bit just based on
Okay.
ballpark.
What
If
about
he goes AL, especially.
signs with the Yankees?
Ballpark's going to be very much in his favor. So then the power numbers are, you can kind of put those back in and say he could be a high 20s, maybe even a 30 home run guy. So yeah,
What if
Yankees might be the best possible place for him to go, except that I
he
don't like that
goes,
he has to go to the AL for the first time.
what if he goes to with interleague so rampant now? I'm not really worried about AL or NL, but you do you. But okay, what if he goes back to the Dodgers?
If he goes back to the Dodgers, I'm probably more concerned. I don't know. I feel like LA was part of the problem. I know Chicago's a big market, but there's different levels of aspiration in Chicago than there are in LA. Um, and I just don't see him going back to LA. But
What about Boston?
Boston would be okay. I mean, he's going to have a short porch down the pole. If he goes, he doesn't really go opposite, but if he goes opposite, he's got the wall. Center field's going to be a problem for him. So I could see it being an average issue for him. And powers, I would project to go be about the same or as they are right now, which would be like over a full season, 26. But I wouldn't expect it like I think that's over a full season. So I expect the power numbers to come down if he goes to
That's
Boston
fair.
because left center or right center's tough in
I'm
Boston.
a little surprised that you send out on Cody
I
Bellinger.
think I am, despite being in on him for like the last 3 years and waiting for this bounce back and being very happy to see it. I feel like if he's going to go top 20, 25, that's going to be too rich for me, considering there's probably guys I like just as much in that area.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, I like them. I wonder if the top 25 that could potentially have a it could have an issue with other guys being there that just feel a little bit safer. So I might not be completely I might not be in enough. Like if, for instance, let's just throw out a name. I don't even know if he's going to be there, but say Marcus Semien is at 25. Marcus Semien, who's done it, who's now going on like 4 or 5 years in a row, or Cody Bellinger after after a one season bounce back. Yeah, I mean that might be a tough call. It might
Yeah.
be tough for me to go Bellinger over like a Marcus Semien there. Adalis Garcia or Cody Bellinger. Again, Adalis, I know I'm just going with Rangers now, but I mean Adalis Garcia, who's done it now multiple seasons in a row, or Cody Bellinger after 1 year bounce back. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if Cody Bellinger's at 30, 35. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I could
I
see
like
getting
him. I
in if
like
he
him.
stands right there.
It might depend on the price, but yeah, I mean, I like him. You haven't talked me completely out of him, even though you have dampered the enthusiasm, beat on as a wet blanket might.
31.8% hard hit rate. He was 38% last year, 46% in 2019 when he did his crazy thing. 6.4 was the barrel rate, 8.3 last year, 12.7 in 2019, 9.4 in 2020. So, I mean, those are the biggest concerns. Is like he didn't really hit the ball any harder, like hard hits all in line, like even soft hit, like it's all pretty much in line. It just like he hit the ball out and he had solid BABIP. So I'm not buying the 305. The power I could potentially be in on, but the 305 I think is my biggest thing where I don't see that happening again.
He did level out his
He
swing a
did.
little bit.
Definitely leveled out swing. That helped. That helped just to avoid some of those massive gaps that had created in his swing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I mean that definitely could help keep the average from bottoming out and him dropping into like the 220s again. I don't believe he's that, but like 260, 270 is probably more along where I have him. But 260, 25, and 18, still pretty solid. And that's probably even fairly conservative based on what you were saying.
Yeah. All right, let's move on.
All right, so on the pitcher side, I think there's a handful of pitchers we can give the MVP talks to. I'll throw out some names here and let's just kind of walk through them and maybe discuss our order for next year with these guys. Zach Eflin, he definitely fits into the most improved category. He went from an afterthought to one of the best pitchers on the play rater this season. Justin Steele, I think both you and I had him as a breakout, and he definitely showed it. If last season wasn't the breakout, he's had it officially. Kodai Senga, he's up for the MVP award just based on, I mean, a 29% K rate in his first 160 innings as a major leaguer at the U.S. level, at least, or the Major League Baseball level. Pablo Lopez had 189 innings of 228 strikeout, 29% K rate ball. And Kyle Bradish had 158 innings of a 301, 107. So all these guys were very good, Gray. Let's walk down the list. Let's talk about who you like the most. Let's start with like the top two, and we'll work our way down from there in regards to what you're looking at for next year.
So I was just looking at because Kodai Senga is much lower on the player rater than Eflin and Steele. For starters, for starter rankings, Eflin is sixth out of starters, and Steele is seventh, and Senga is 17th. So I was looking at why, and it looks like it's pretty obvious that Senga just didn't have as many wins. He lagged Eflin by 3 and Steele by what 4. So if you were to give Senga the same amount of the same amount of wins as Steele, he would have, let's see, 5 more. He would have 24 points. He would be right between Eflin and Steele actually on the player rater. He would be 7th, and Steele would be moved down to 8th. So yeah, I don't even know if any of that matters. But I was just walking through it in my head to see where like guys finish. Yeah, so it's basically the player rater is telling us Eflin was the best, Senga was the second best, and Steele was the third best. If all things being equal with their wins. So how will it look next year is kind of my, that's where I'm at. And I feel like Steele has the most, I mean, Steele and Senga feel really special, and Eflin feels like I want Eflin. I just don't think he's necessarily like a top 5 starter, which he is pretty much right now. And I don't think he's going to be drafted like that either. So, yeah, I mean, I would say Senga is probably, for me, Senga was the most valuable. Eflin and Senga were probably close in ADP. Ah, man, they're so hard. And Steele, I wrote a sleeper post about, but I feel like Steele was getting drafted maybe a tad bit higher than them by the end of draft season. So I mean, I guess I would probably go Senga as like the best value, and then Eflin, and then Steele. But all 3 of them were like incredibly valuable, as I'm saying. I think honestly for next year, I like all 3 of them again. I don't really like Senga's walk rate is a little bit high, but he's got more strikeouts, and I also think he can get his walk rate lower than it was this year. Like he's not the best for command. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's not going to be Eflin or Steele, 2 guys who have like insanely good command. But Senga, he can like probably get into the mid 3s for a walk rate. If he's in the mid 3s for a walk rate and he has a 10.5 or higher strikeout rate, then yeah, I mean, I think Senga is the move for next year too. I don't know. I like all 3 of them though. I'm really like struggling to discern any real like winner here. I mean, I don't know. If I had to say a winner, I'd say Senga, but I really like both. I really like all 3 of them. And Steele, I mean, Steele. See, the thing is too, to go on a side note for all this, it's like the guys that are next year's Steele, Eflin, and Senga. That's the guys you have to target in your drafts, and that's I think where we really excel, because like I was all about like Cool Whip wrote a sleeper post on Eflin. I wrote a sleeper post for Steele. Senga, I was like, I drafted Senga in every league, and I told everyone like he is being so undervalued, and I was not only right about he was undervalued, but I was right for why he was undervalued, because he was so clearly at worst a number 2, and he was getting drafted as like a number 4. Like I even said, I think at one point in the preseason, I was like, Senga is not going to be drafted after the top 100 next year. I don't know why he's going at 200 overall. Like it did not make any sense. And it was the same really with Steele. Eflin was a little bit more out of nowhere, but like I said, Cool Whip wrote a super post on him, and I liked Eflin a lot in the preseason. And I think it really goes to like as soon as like the Rays get invested in someone, it's like, be interested, be interested, because that's all you really need to know. But yeah, it's like who's next year's Eflin, Steele, and Senga? That's the real question, which we may not answer.
which we're not probably going to answer in this podcast, but we will answer, along the lines as we get down to it. I don't know. We'll probably get to a few names here that belong in that conversation. I guess real quick, since you were having such difficulties with it, I would say that Senga's probably my top one, primarily because of the K rate. Just I think it's absolutely absurd, and I think that's probably the most repeatable with the K rate, and to the point of him just getting acclimated to the shift in games. Like if you give him till mid June and just look at the numbers from mid June on, like he had a 317 walk per nine. Like that is considerably better than what he was doing before that. He had one game the entire rest of the way from mid June on where he gave up 4 walks. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games in his first 12 games where he had 4 walks or more. Like it got the walks under control to some extent. I'm not gonna say they were under control because there's a lot of 2s and 3s in there. But with the walks, the Ks, and just the nastiness of the stuff, I think he's probably at the top of the list. I trust Steele to do it the most at next, and then Eflin third. And Eflin mainly because they limited the number of pitches he's throwing. That can get adjusted season to season. Like if people just understand what he's throwing, that'll cut down on what he can do. And also, whether it's fair or not, I'm so invested in Ray's pitchers this year and got hurt so badly that I just the way they asked them to throw all out all the time. There's a concern about Ray's pitchers that you have to draft too early. If you miss out on a guy who goes in like the 8th round, 12th round later, then okay. But if you're taking a guy in those top, 100 picks or so, like I want a little bit of more health guarantee. That being said, I still would probably draft Eflin in top 100 pretty easily.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the comment I made about the Rays, I mean, like if they're throwing, a random starter in as their 4th or 5th guy, he's absolutely worth looking at.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's the top guys. Like I was out on McClanahan and I've been out on Glasnow for a while. Even though I really like Glasnow just in general because he's so filthy. But yeah, McClanahan I was out on. Springs and Rasmussen were, unfortunately, they bit me. But that was, they were much more affordable in drafts than most guys.
I had all of them. I think I was literally just trying to have the Rays pitching staff at one point, and that didn't go well for that team. But Pablo Lopez, Kyle Bradish were the other 2 that I mentioned based on ADP. I think Pablo Lopez, just we've seen it from him now a couple of times. Came back from the injury, showed the strikeouts, showed the innings. I feel like he's probably the next in line for me. But Bradish could be one of those guys we were talking about. I feel like despite having a 301, 107 across almost 160 innings, nobody's talking about him. He's going to go underdrafted. And you and I are going to sit each other and go, hey, why is Bradish going to 190? And we're just going to draft him.
Yeah, no, completely. I wonder where he's going to end up going, Bradish. I think you could be right though. I have a feeling I'm gonna rank him somewhere where I ranked Logan Webb this year. I'm gonna have Bradish and at the bottom of the top 100, and then his ADP is gonna be 170. ESPN's gonna rank him at 240. Yahoo's not even gonna rank him. I'm gonna be Kyle Bradish is pretty good, guys. He was actually already good. He was already good.
He's already been good.
Guys, there, and every year, it sounds ridiculous to say it now because people are looking at Kyle Bradish's numbers and they're seeing the barely 3 ERA in 160 innings. It's a huge sample size, and Kyle Bradish has been great. And people are going to look at that and hear this, and they're going to be like, Kyle Bradish is not going to go that late. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I've seen it before. Every year, it's like, I'm telling you, man, it's like every year. So there's going to be guys who are like going later, and you're going to be like, the only thing I can say here is he's already been good. I can't add anything else. Like, like there's certain guys I'll just write a sleeper post for, and I'll be like, he was already good last year. I mean, you just have to look at his numbers. I get that he's going later because of like a lack of a track record or something, but that doesn't mean he's not good. Just because he doesn't have a track record doesn't make him not good,
Yeah, I mean, if you can do it for 160 innings, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that Kyle Bradish is somebody who goes underappreciated, not a high K guy. Like I just see him going like at earliest like 140, like
Yeah.
maybe. And like I don't see him really climbing ahead of that. Just given again, there's a lot of pitchers that did just fine this year.
Yeah.
Let's talk
No,
about.
totally. And also, I think people are still a little bit like they take a year or two to acclimate to like what teams are good. And I don't think people like are fully convinced that the Orioles are good, and they are. And also, the stadium is excellent for pitching. I mean, it's really good pitching park. So yeah, Kyle Bradish all the way. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to move us on to some more guys who belong in these fantasy award discussions. Like I said, I think Bellinger probably belongs at the top of this discussion in regards to MVP specifically, but there's definitely some other guys who performed well at low ADPs. Josh Lowe had a great season. Tel Marte had, if other than Bellinger, maybe the best bounce back season. Spencer Steer had his breakout year. It started slow, but he's definitely turned it on. Jake Berger, like you look up, he had 34 home runs. My boy that I love bringing up every time we have player rater discussions, Lane Thomas, 27-20, 270, and CJ Abrams. He could go 2040. He's still got a few games left to go. He's at 1843 right now. 2040, and like I hear a few people talk about his name, and I'm sure he'll get some buzz going into next year just because he was a top prospect. I mean, he never really left the ranks of top prospect other than the injuries, but like CJ Abrams might go lower than he should for going 2040 potentially, 2045 maybe.
Yeah, no, completely. I think I wrote a sleeper post on CJ Abrams this past preseason, and I think there's a chance that I won't write it, but there's a chance he could still be slept on a bit. he's still going to go lower than he should. I mean, there's just no way I think he goes anywhere close. I personally, I don't think it. At least, I don't think there's any way he goes anywhere close to where he should be going in drafts. Like he's gonna be, I would guess, at like 75
That's what
ish.
I was thinking.
Yeah, and like if you look at his numbers, you're like, I mean, how do you say okay, 15 homers, 40 steals, and that's like what? That is not. I mean, that's not top 50. I mean, that's like, it's like, I don't know. I mean, that's to me, that's easy top 50, right? I mean, right now on the player rater, he's at 56 overall. Um, and that was with a slow start, a little bit of a slow start to the year. You assume he's going to be not have a slow start. I mean, I guess you don't have to assume that, but if he does not, if he does avoid the slow start, then he's going to be better than this year. So I don't know. I mean, he's easy top 50, I think, but he's probably going to go like 2 to 3 rounds after that. I would guess. Again, this is all an inexact science, so who knows? Jake Berger feels like one of those guys who is just going to be completely forgotten next year. Like he's going to be one of those guys, whether it's right or not. He's going to be one of those guys that is like drafted at like 200 overall. You know, you took Nolan Arenado at 70. I just got Jake Berger at 200. And that usually doesn't work out so well for the person who's taking Jake Berger. That's usually a way to that's usually a way to lose your league when you're doing shit like that. But Nolan Arenado, that example may not play out as well as it sounds right now, because I do think Nolan Arenado is fading a little bit. So Arenado might be overrated a little bit. But back to Jake Berger. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's so hard. Like the guys who just give you that power and nothing else. Like this year, Jorge Soler, he was the best. Like he was probably the best, like bang for your buck for later on for just getting power and like nothing else really. Like not a terrible average. I don't know what Jorge Soler had. I don't have it in front of me. I'm guessing like around 250. So I mean, a 35 plus homer 250 guy is great with no steals at all. If that's fine, that's great. Like I would draft that absolutely at 185 to 210 overall. The problem is those guys, if they don't hit for power in like April, then you're sitting on a guy who's like a drain on average, has no speed. Is not like, for instance, look at Marcell Ozuna. Like that's what he was like the first, like I think month plus of the season. He wasn't great, and then he turned it on later, and he became actually very valuable. But like early on, he was so bad that if you drafted him, you were like, I think I'm going to drop him. And it's Jake Berger, Jorge Soler will be in a similar situation, even though I think Jorge Soler, because he's done it a couple years and he's a free agent, so we'll see where he lands. But I think Jorge Soler's got a little bit more of a track record. So so Jorge Soler is probably going to go higher, probably in the top 100 ish, maybe, bottom like 90 to 105, maybe Jorge Soler, maybe a little bit higher, maybe 80. But Jake Berger is going to go much later, and people are going to be looking at him like, oh well, I'll just get power from Jake Berger later, and it just doesn't always work out that way. I mean, it could. It just doesn't though. It's just hard. It's just hard. Like if you're building your team like that, usually you're probably going to fall behind in some way, because like you do that too much, and like it's like if people were this year, I was doing it with like on a smaller scale. I did it this year with Jose Abreu, because you look at Jose Abreu and you're like, well, if I get 25 270 at like pick 75, it's basically Vlad Guerrero, and it ended up being that actually is what Vlad Guerrero ended up doing. The problem was Jose Abreu didn't do it. That's the issue. It's like there's a reason why guys go earlier on, because they're a little bit more, trustworthy. It's like, yeah, I mean, Vlad Guerrero Jr. had a down year, but his down year was still so much better than Jose Abreu, So I like Jake Berger, but I don't know. I don't know. It depends on where he is in drafts. I don't think I'm going to be in necessarily, but I do think the power is more or less real.
Yeah, I think he can be a power bat, and I mean, I think a lot of the times with the power specific bats, there's definitely periods of just absolute ice coldness, and that extends to almost every power bat. So, I mean, I think I'm gonna be more in on Jake Berger. It sounds like than maybe you are, but he's gonna slip. He's gonna go far in drafts. But like, I mean, Kyle Schwarber, who still hit for power, still gave you that. Like, he was horrendous outside of that. And he got drafted, significantly earlier. I mean, granted, he still gave you 45 home runs. You got the power only from him, but it came with like a 210 average, which was just burying at times for lineups. So it just kind of goes that way with some of the power only guys if you're building your roster around those types.
Yeah, no, completely. And in some leagues, you kind of have to take a flyer on a Jake Burger. Like in a shallower league, like in a 12-team mixed league or shallower, you can take a flyer on a Jake Burger, and if he doesn't work in like the first couple weeks of the season, you can move on. Like, that's not an issue. It's just like in the draft and hold leagues or 15-team and deeper, you go Jake Burger, he doesn't work out, then you're looking for guys off of waivers or a draft and hold. You don't even have that option. But if it is a waiver league, even then you're like, where am I finding a 35 home run guy? Like, I don't know if I can.
Yeah. I mean, you just kind of get in those positions. All right, great. Let's move over to the less sunny side of the fantasy award show. Let's talk about the least valuable players. And let's also, I mean, we'll fold into this, some of our bad calls because, some of the bad players are bad calls. We've beaten Alec Manoah and Lance Lynn just into the ground. Let's just go ahead and put them on the list, and let's go around to some other guys. Gray, who else do you have on the list of worst players or worst calls, guys that killed you this year?
Let me open up my team page. Let me open up a few of my team pages. Oh man, I got one team. See, here's the thing though about like different size leagues. I have one team where I'm battling for first, and my first pitcher drafted was Yu Darvish, who stunk. But I also have another team that is battling for last, and my first pitcher was, I had Ohtani, Christian Javier, and then Yu Darvish, and then Lance Lynn. So I mean, it's like, is that bad luck? I mean, Ohtani I used as a hitter, but Christian Javier was awful. Yu Darvish stunk. Lance Lynn was like, I mean, he was like the worst. He's possibly the worst person. I mean, he's not even the worst player. He's just a terrible person. No, he's not. No, I'm joking. He's not a bad person that I know of. Maybe he is. I don't know him. But I mean, he's a bad person for what he did to my fantasy team. That's true. That's an accurate statement. Oh man, I had so many. I mean, it's not even like, I don't even know if I call these bad calls. Like, a bad call implies this was something you could have foresaw. Like, I don't know. Maybe I could have foresaw it. I don't know. I mean, if I could have, I probably would have. So I guess I couldn't. But I mean, what do you do with that? What do you do with like Yu Darvish, Lance Lynn, Christian Javier, as your first three starters off the board? Like, you can't do nothing with that. That's garbage. It's just so bad, like, I don't know. I mean, there was others too. How about the fact that like, Jonathan India, I don't know why I thought of him, but he hurt me so much last year. And I assumed, because he hurt me so much in 2022, I assumed he was going to bounce back in 2023. And it looked that way for a while. But you look at the player rater, Jonathan India wasn't good this year either. Like, what happened to him? I'm glad I didn't invest in that guy.
His spot in the batting order kept falling as they kept calling up better players.
Yeah, right? And then you have like, And then you have like the bad luck of like drafting Robbie Ray. I didn't draft Robbie Ray. I wrote in my rankings that I was avoiding Robbie Ray. I was smart to avoid Robbie Ray, but not for the reasons that it ended up being. But I mean, that like a guy like Robbie Ray is just such bad luck. Like, what do you do with that? Like, that's why there's like, you can know everything about all these players. And I think we do more or less know them all. It's just a matter of like, it's just luck to a certain extent. Like, there's no, like, it's always funny when people are like, they get like they puff up their chest and they get into this mode of like, I know more than you. Which I've done that before myself.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Every single podcast I do that.
Yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, that's the nature of the business, but it's also like in reality, no one knows anything. I mean, we know all the players and we know the path to win a league, but you still need luck. Like O'Neal Cruz, was that a bad call? Because I drafted O'Neal Cruz and Jazz Chisholm in so many leagues this year. They killed me. I mean, Jazz Chisholm was fine when he was on the field, but he wasn't on the field much. And O'Neal Cruz was just like, and it was also in leagues where I really couldn't do anything about it. Like in deeper leagues, I actually have O'Neal Cruz still on my IL in certain leagues because it's like I can't do anything anyway. Like in an NL only league, what can you do with O'Neal Cruz? You can't do anything with that. Like, and then you have other leagues like in a 15-team mixed league with a weekly fab, and you have a 5-man bench or a 6-man bench, whatever it is in those NFBC leagues. Like I have O'Neal Cruz still as of like 2 weeks ago. I think I finally dropped him, but it's like, what do I do there? I drop him for what? It's like there's no one going to be as good as him on waivers. Like it's, I think Matt McLean ended up being like the best, fab pickup in, NL only league. And I was the one who picked him up. I picked him up to replace O'Neal Cruz. So even with the best guy replacing O'Neal Cruz, you still can't do anything with that. I mean, it's just bad luck. So with all that said, don't blame me for any of my errors. It's all luck.
That's a hell of a CYA statement there, Gray. I'll just go ahead and admit to, some of my bad ones before I brag a little bit on the ones I did get right. We are, like I said, Hunter Green, I really thought he was going to take a next step, and he started to, and the ERA just never came around, and then he just started to look bad and worse as the season went along. I will say I feel like I got dragged on board the Taylor Ward bandwagon, but I was dragged aboard the Taylor Ward bandwagon, so I'll take some discredit there. Like I was trying to fight it as hard as possible, and then everybody's like, "Well, go look at the StatCast. He hits the ball really hard." I'm like, "Oh, that's sexy. Let's just jump in on that."
I wrote a Taylor Ward sleeper post.
It was probably you, Gray. You were probably like, "No, Taylor Ward needs to be higher. You're dumb." I'm like, "Okay, I'm dumb. He's gonna hit. There's no way he won't hit second for the Angels all season. It's the Angels. They definitely wouldn't do something dumb."
Yes.
Vaughn Grissom, my bad. Like I totally thought he was gonna be it. Nah, he didn't even play. Andres Jimenez, like he started to turn around towards the end of the season, but like he was bad. Teoscar, I thought was gonna be a huge success, big bounce back, and just like nothing. Brady Singer, my apologies on Brady Singer. I really thought he was gonna be good.
I like Brady Singer too.
As like a late flyer, I really like Jesse Winker. I thought he was going to bounce back. That was definitely wrong.
Oh no, you're right. You're on an island with that one. I was not on Jesse Winker. I will not take Jesse Winker on my sinking ship. No Jesse Winker.
Dansby Swanson, I 100% wanted everywhere because he was going so late. And I think for where I got him in most leagues, it was still fine, but he did not do what I thought he was going to do. And then all the rookies that we got excited that got jobs like out of camp, I like Oscar Colas was straight up bad his first run out.
He was terrible.
Jordan Walker got demoted for going 270, 3 home runs, 2 stolen bases. Volpe, I don't know if Volpe was bad or not. Like we got him late. He stole bases. He played every day. Whether you should have rostered him for a full season or not, that depends on the league, maybe. But like I think that group of kind of the young guys who got jobs in camp, I drafted all over the place, being very excited, and I probably will again with the next crop of guys who get jobs coming out of camp next year. But that was definitely
actually, if you think about Oscar Colas, Lance Lynn, Eloy Jimenez, Tim Anderson, I'm trying to think of a common denominator with these guys.
What could possibly be the same thing here?
I'm thinking. Let me think. Hold on. I can't think of it.
Can't come up with anything.
Can't come up with any common denominator on those guys.
Oh yeah, they've that's just a shift
Jan Makata.
All right, Gray. We talked about all our bad calls, or some of our bad calls. Let's pat ourselves on the back here a little bit. What are some of your best calls, Gray?
Actually, my another bad call. Bad call. No.
Fine, we'll just go more bad calls.
You know what? No, you're right. I'm not doing any more. I make plenty of good calls. I'm not going to say any more of my bad calls. All right, my good calls. Matt Olson, I was like, in the beginning of the season, I was like, he's going to hit 50 homers. I said that. I said it. We can go back and find the clip. We're not going to, though, because that's a lot of work. But that's
someone else's job.
That's someone else's job who we haven't hired yet, okay?
By hired, he means does it for free.
I drafted Corbin Carroll in multiple leagues. I loved Corbin Carroll coming in. He's top 5 on the player rater in his rookie year. And that's kind of with an issue with the shoulder that has seen his power come down a little bit in the second half. But I saw Corbin Carroll coming into this year. I was like, yeah, I mean, that guy, like, if you just watch Corbin Carroll, you're like, that guy's got 50 steal speed. I mean, you can see it. Like, sometimes a guy looks fast and you're like, well, I guess he's not stealing. I don't know what the issue is there. But Corbin Carroll, I knew he had the speed. I mean, anyone could see it. It wasn't like that was a crazy call by me. But I did draft him in a bunch of leagues, and he did really good. He did well for me. I would say once again, like, we mentioned these guys earlier, but I had a lot of good calls with SPs, like starters. I was all about, Luis Castillo, I said was a number 1, even though he wasn't getting drafted as a number 1 back in, like, people do this thing during draft season where they're like, well, yeah, I mean, you can take Strider or Cole or Corbin Burns or Woodruff or Scherzer or Verlander, and that's a number 1. But if you take a Luis Castillo, that's not a number 1. Like, yes, it is. He's still a number 1. I mean, I don't know why some people do that, and people may be thinking I'm making up a straw man who doesn't exist. but people do that. I've heard people say, like, that's not a number 1 about guys who are absolutely number 1s. Like, people will do that, like, in the preseason, people will do that about, like, Kevin Gausman. They'll be like, yeah, I mean, he's a solid number 2, but I don't know if he's a number 1. Like, no, he's a number 1. Absolutely a number 1. So, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of good calls with starters. I think, the Senga one I mentioned earlier, the Justin Steele one I mentioned earlier. I liked Gausman. I liked Castillo. I liked Logan Webb. You can honestly, it'd be easier for me to go through and pick out starters I didn't like who ended up doing well, surprisingly, and it'd be a lot shorter list. Like, I wasn't in on Freddie Peralta, but he did well. But a lot of guys, most of the guys I was in on did well. I mean, I liked Logan Gilbert. I liked Logan Webb. I liked Senga, Gaussman. I'm just going through the top 20 starters right now on the player rater. Framber Valdez was an obvious number one to me. I think I have Eflin. Zach Galen. I don't think I drafted him anywhere. I liked him though. I was more than willing to draft him if he was there on the board for me. He was, I think he was going later than he should have been. There's so many starters. It's like this every year too. I mean, people hear this and they're like, yeah, but you got, lucky this year. Like, no, this is not the case. It's not luck. Like, it has nothing to do with luck. It's always like this every year because as I've said this so many times, there's no accounting for wins. So you have one category already that's just totally up in the air. Then you have like ratios, ERA and WHIP. WHIP to a lesser extent, but ERA is also just like, it's so out of the pitcher's control a lot of times. Like what his ERAs are so fickle. Really, the only thing you can account for is like strikeouts. So, I mean, it's not hard. It really isn't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some people find it harder than others, but I find so many starters are available later that you really don't have to draft starters high. Anyway, that's a soapbox that I've been on for a long time. Yeah, I mean, other good calls was like avoiding top catchers. Like you want to see a terrible crop of players. you look at the catchers for this year. The top catcher is William Contreras. And he's barely in the top 100 overall. I mean, when you say top catchers, it's a misnomer because there are no top catchers. There's literally none. Every year, people get into their drafts and they're like, well, I took JT Realmuto at at the back end of the second round because my catcher is going to be so great and your catcher is going to stink. And that's going to make such a huge difference for my team. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't work. That never works. That literally never works. I don't know why people continue to confuse themselves or try and convince themselves, they try and convince themselves that taking a top catcher is the way to like victory, but it doesn't work that way. I mean, there's so many catchers that you could have had later. Yanir Diaz, the Astros guy, he's a top 10 catcher. Not only could you not have him later, you could have just picked him up off of waivers for free. And there's other guys, like every single catcher this year was available later. That William Contreras, who is the top catcher, he was even available later. Like there was no reason to draft a top catcher, which is, that's a thing I've been saying for years, and people ignore it. Which, I mean, you should ignore some of the stuff I say, but yeah, maybe don't ignore that one. But I don't know. Anyway, those are a few of my right calls, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, on the soapbox of the pitchers and catchers, as we always are, Gray. I mean, I was on the William Contreras. That's one that I had. I feel like I had correct, and like you said, we just say don't draft catchers. Adley actually, I think both of us were off the draft him where he's going. He ended up being the second catcher. So if you drafted a catcher high and you wanted the second best catcher, which is still less the production than you could have gotten at that draft spot, then okay, you got the second best catcher with Adley. I think Will Smith continues to be like the safest one that you know what you're getting from. If we're just looking at the catcher position, and I'll probably say it again next year when we start up all the catcher previews. Like if you want to know what you're getting from a catcher, it's Will Smith, and then the rest of them are just crapshoots.
Yeah, no, completely. And also, like, if you look at Adley Rushman or Will Smith. Will Smith went at 48. He was 48 ADP, and Adelaide was 60 ADP. And now, Adelaide is after 100 overall, and Will Smith is 146 overall on a player rater. So it's not like, yeah, they are. I mean, more or less, they are safer than most catchers, but they're still not great value. I mean, they're not going to give you anywhere close to like, Adley Rushman or Will Smith, for instance. Well, let's just say Will Smith. Going on both sides of Will Smith in the drafts was Ozzie Albies and Corey Seager. I mean, oh God, I wish I had either of those players. It's like, and it's like that. I mean, if you go down, and these are just grabbing the people that are around, like Adley Rushman, it was like Kevin Gausman or Devin Williams. Oh yeah, I want either of those guys instead of, and I don't draft closers high either, but I mean, either of them, and those are just taking the two guys that are around them in ADP. So yeah, I mean, anyway, yeah, I mean, we had a good year.
I pulled up Dalton Varsho. He went 34th ADP. Now, unfortunately, the names directly next to him don't really make a good case because it was Jazz Chisholm and Jacob deGrom. But we tried to warn you about at least one of those. But
Jacob
Matt Olson went 2 picks after. So, like, you can have Matt Olson instead of Dalton Varsho in most leagues. Just throwing that out there.
No, completely. I think also with like Dalton Varsho, people who I consider to be smart fantasy players, I mean, they were convinced Dalton Varsho was a great pick where he was going. I mean, they were convinced of it. It's like, I'm not going to dig through old, like, takes, but I'm telling you, when I'm telling you the truth, I'm telling you the truth. And people were convinced of Dalton Varsho. And you look at it and you're like, why? Why? Like, why? What was so great about Dalton Varsho that we're like in the third round? Like, I'm not saying I wouldn't have been interested in maybe, I don't know, if he was going at like 100 overall. Maybe. Yeah, maybe I would have been interested. But in the third round, he was actually, I wrote an overrated post for Dalton Varsho. So yeah, he was another call of mine. I was totally out on Dalton Varsho. I don't know. And honestly, even because there's other people whose opinions I respect, and I was like, and they were convinced that Dalton Varsho was a good pick in the third round, and I read their reasoning, and I still wrote the overrated post. So obviously they didn't convince me. I wasn't convinced. I don't know. I mean, it seemed obvious, honestly. And I'm only saying that now because I said it then. If I didn't say it then, I wouldn't say it now. But it seemed totally obvious to me that Dalton Varsho was not going to be a good pick. But
yeah,
I got burned by Jazz Chisholm and O'Neal Cruz, so it didn't matter. I mean, in the end, instead of Dalton Varsho, I drafted O'Neal Cruz, so it didn't matter to me. But
maybe you got Matt Olson, Gray. Maybe
I
did
get Matt Olson in a few leagues, so that was good. Yeah,
there you go.
I would have. I mean, if I would have taken, I think someone mentioned this on the on Razzball in the comments the other day, but you could have drafted Acuna, then Strider, then Olson, then Albies. I think you would have had such a good team. You might have been in the running to win like the overall if you would have drafted all Braves in like the first.
That was basically my plan.
If you would have done that though, do you know how crazy I would have called you? I would have been like, you're nuts, man.
That's not anything abnormal for me, Gray. Every time I say anything, you tell me I'm crazy. So I've been like, no, why don't I want a piece of the best offense in baseball? Like, give me as many pieces of it as I can get hitting at the top.
Yeah, I would have been like, wow, you're so crazy. And I would have been so wrong. But that's the name of the game. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. What can you do?
Yeah, that is definitely the name of the game. Unfortunately, you can't get them all right. If you could get them all right, there wouldn't really be a game so much to play as like looking back at historic records and just going from there. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I guess before we before I let it go, I haven't said any of my picks, so just so you know that I had some good ones out there.
Oh yeah, go.
Sandy and Alcantara, we told you to avoid him. Like both of us told you to avoid him.
I said that as
constantly,
well. Yeah.
as much as we could. I feel right that I was on Bo Bichette's speed. At least he did hit for a very good average and was putting up the runs, but the speed fell off, and that was definitely part of the value. Now, I did not get the Freddie Freeman part of the speed falling off, but what can you do when a 36-year-old, 37-year-old breaks his stolen base record by like double? I had Otani, Ronald Acuna 1-2 in my rankings. Feel like that was pretty good. Gleyber Torres, I said he was going to have a great year. He had a great year. Gunnar Henderson, I had him fairly high in my rankings. Said feel safe with him as your third baseman. After being a little shaky early on, he definitely got together. George Kirby, Freddie Peralta were two of my bigger pitcher hits. I remember sitting on this podcast with you talking about pitchers, saying George Kirby is the guy that's making that jump. He's going to be in that top conversation of like the guys who made the jump, put up the innings, and that's what he did. I've always loved Mitch Keller. I would love to say that I was definitely 100% certain he was going to do that this year. He was basically free, but still on the Mitch Keller train, even though he kind of fell off towards the end of the season.
Yeah, true.
All right, Gray. Got that out of my system. I got to say at least a few names that I got right. Let's go ahead and get through some bullpen talk here, and anything we can do to help guys find some last second saves here as we wind up the season.
Okay, so I think with a few of these, if like a team, like say the team like the Braves or the Dodgers, with their, with them locking up like home field and being in the playoffs, and other teams too, if the teams are locking up playoff positions, it's not like if you're really desperate for saves, it's not a bad avenue to go and like grab a setup man, because like for instance, Raciel Iglesias may not get the last save or two of the season because they're resting him for the playoffs, so AJ Minter would come in, or like an Evan Phillips for the Dodgers may get rested in the final weekend, and then Gratterall will get a save or two. So so like looking at guys like that is not a bad it's not a bad way to look at for some saves potentially if you're super desperate. That's not the first avenue. That's just a way in case you're desperate. So a few guys who are actually getting saves, James McArthur for the Royals. I don't even know who he is. I don't know who he is. I honestly, I just learned the name in the last week, and I wouldn't be surprised if by like January rolls around, I will have forgotten who he is, and I don't think he's ever going to get another save. But he might get a save this week, or he might get a couple of saves this week. Brian Shaw, the White Sox, he's looking like he's got some, potential for saves. Aroldis Chapman, potentially. Merriweather and the Cubs. Kimbrel, the Phillies. Alvarado's also there, maybe getting a save or two. Altavino for the Mets, maybe getting a save. Potentially Kinley with the Rockies. Ginkel tried to get a save today for the Diamondbacks. He got rocked, but that's only because I think Seawold had been used a couple of days in a row, maybe. So I think he was getting arrested. I think that's a couple other guys. Fujinami behind Cano in the Orioles potentially. Maybe if if Fairbanks gets rested, Pache, Colin Pache in Tampa potentially, maybe Jordan Hicks for the Jays. So yeah, I mean it's a tough. Aaron Bummer with the White Sox also I think he got a save or two this past week. He might get a few more this week. I don't know. It's it's kind of anyone's guess really in the final week when it comes to saves. So
Yeah, definitely is. I guess other than Dodgers, Braves, the Rays pretty much are close to being locked into their playoff spots. Same with the O's. Twins, Phillies, kind of the same thing. Brewers as well. So those are the teams that you can look at if you are, desperate and trying to find every little last save opportunity to grab. But who it is on those teams, like it may not even be a traditional setup man. Could be a long guy out of the bullpen. Could be a random guy. But those are your teams you're looking at potentially to grab. Let's give some waiver names, and then we'll get out of here, Gray.
Okay. Wow. Well, we have so let's see. So for the 7-day player rater, which is available for free on the razzball.com website, we have a few names who have been hot recently. Christian Encarnacion Strand's been hot. Reds corner infielder. Kind of interested in what he's going to do next year. I'm kind of like he was a guy who I would be, I think he might get a sleeper post. Anyway, John Birdie, who I mentioned earlier in the show, he's been hot. Evan Carter's been hot. Brent Rooker had a hot April, is having a hot September. If he could do something during the middle of the year, maybe not so bad. Mark Vientos, rookie in Queens, has been hitting well. Brandon Rogers, Rockies. Middle infielder has been hitting well. J.P. Crawford hitting on the top of the Mariners lineup. He's been hitting well recently. Brandon Drury, Luis Campesiano, catcher in San Diego, has actually been hitting well. And I'm kind of starting to look at him for like a second catcher for 2024. Jake Slawinski's been hot, hitting well. Joshua Paliasos, absolutely saying his name correctly, on the Pirates. He's been hitting well. And his brother, Richie and Joshua, they've been both hitting well. Let's see, who else? Leody Taveras, Jeff McNeil, Tyrone Taylor, Josh Bell. I think that's about 20 names. So that should give you guys someone to look at.
Yeah, I don't know that Camposano is going to last until you get to taking a second catcher, Gray. He's finished the season very strong.
That's true.
So we'll see. I think he's probably going to be at the back end of my catcher ones. Just thinking about it right now. Palacios, I think, is the guy that you were looking at. If we were just, if you couldn't figure out what name Gray was going for us, I'm pretty sure it's Josh Palacios. On the pitcher side, JP Sears at the Angels. All these matchups could change just given where teams are. Jose Quintana versus Philly. Philly definitely could have locked up a spot by the time they get to that. And in that same line, Jose Buto. Sean Manaea versus San Diego. Ranger Suarez versus Pittsburgh. Ken Waldichuk at the Angels. Kyle Hendricks at Milwaukee. Cutter Crawford at Baltimore if Baltimore's locked up the spot. Matt Waldron at San Francisco. John Means versus Boston. John Means has looked good since coming back from the injury. That's a guy that I'm probably going to throw back on the grab at the end of drafts. I had him on there this year and it was working out. Then he got hurt. I think I'm going to kind of come back on that one. And Johan Oviedo at Philly, he's been up and down, but it's been a little bit more down recently. So again, if you need it and Philly's locked into a spot, I think you could roll him out there. I know that in my RCL, I've just been chasing every start that doesn't look like it's going to completely destroy my numbers. So just chasing strikeout masses. Gray, I know you are chasing down the number one spot in the Perch League right now. It's a three-way race right now between you, Stanson, and Kramit, and it's close.
Yeah, I know. Which really sucks. What really sucks for me, at least, I was going to say it sucks in general, but it sucks for me specifically, not for the other two. If I would have gotten any luck with wins, I would be running away with the league. I would be winning. I would be winning in a walk, like Ronald Acuna Jr. is winning the NL MVP. That's how much I would be lapping the other guys. If I had any luck at all with wins, my wins luck, I have a 3 in wins and an 11 in ERA, an 11 in WHIP, like 11 in Ks, like 11 in saves. Like my pitching staff is so good. By the way, my first pitcher I drafted was Yu Darvish. So there you go. That's how my pitching is so good, and I drafted terrible pitching. not intentionally, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, next week we do our 2024 top 25. It's exciting.
It is. As we look forward to next year. Gray, thanks for another great season of the podcast. Hope everybody gets whatever they need to finish out your season strong, whether that's a head-to-head win or just chasing down those right stats to take home your league title. If you have questions, as always, come find us on Twitter. I am at RazBeaton. Gray is the owner of the @Razball account. Come find us on youtube.com/RazballFantasy. Leave a comment out there. All the videos are going out there for the baseball. Football is in full stride out there as well. And until next week when we do our look into 2024, Gray, I'll talk to you later.
All right, Leeds.